Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show once again. On the temperature front, again, temperatures into the lower 90s across southern Alaska from the Kuskokwim Valley in over to the Copper River Basin, and that includes the Kenai Peninsula and Susitna Valley. Stony, 93 degrees this afternoon. That's Stony River, also 91 degrees, with just west of Sleepmute. And Stony's farther to the east toward the Alaska Range. And otherwise, Big Lake there, southern Susitna Valley, and Chitina, I spelled that wrong, over in the Copper River Basin east of Gulkana and Glen Ellen. And Talkeetna, all 90 degrees this afternoon, coming up after kind of a slower start than even yesterday. They're shooting up this afternoon. Ski Lac Lake, Kenai Peninsula, up to 91 degrees, as well as the Kenai NWR also. So lower 90s even over the Kenai Peninsula this afternoon. And for tonight, hazardous weather graphic, dense fog advisory out until 6 a.m. Monday for the mid and lower Tanana Valley. They're including Tanana over into the greater Fairbanks area. That could dense smoke, reduce visibility, like the fog, reduce visibilities under half, sometimes less than a quarter mile at times. And that is back out again for the western Kenai Peninsula for the same sort of pattern, with it mostly overnight into the early morning hours and improves in the afternoon. And for fire danger, expanding area, ever-expanding area of high and very high fire danger. You can see covering a good portion of the state, starting to show up here, Kobuk Valley, or not the Kobuk Valley, the Buckland area over on the northern Seward Peninsula, and down into King Salmon, northeast, down into Bristol Bay, northeast Bristol Bay there, into Ski Lac Lake extreme, and right on up into the Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range, areas of extreme fire danger, Susitna Valley, Matanuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Copper River Basin, and high fire danger here over the northern Panhandle. And for satellite imagery, we've got big area high pressure again continuing here from actually the south of Kodiak Island, extending right on up into the Arctic, and you can see the clouds circulating over the top of that. We've got northwest flow coming down, and just some areas of clouds just skiffing along the eastern Arctic coast into the and along the eastern border here with no precipitation in it. Widespread low clouds still out here over the Gulf of Alaska, right into the coastline of the Panhandle, especially during the morning hours, late overnight, early morning hours. Same thing here, Yakutat, Cordova, fog this morning. And some of that looked like it got into Prince William Sound, went up the Resurrection Bay area into Seward. They had some low clouds and fog. And it looks like improving there. Kodiak Island breaking out this afternoon, kind of a westerly flow pushing this off to the east and back to the west here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. You can see flow is northeast, which is actually carrying some smoke. You can just faintly see the grayish area here northeast of Bethel and on up into the Fairbanks area where they've got the advisory out. That's coming southwestward there, and that also is keeping the low stuff well off to the southwest. Just a few clouds around the Pribilofs today, otherwise mostly sunny, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island again, here right down into the southeast Bering, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, very nice conditions. And even the North Slope, I think it was Kaktovik, was in the lower 70s this afternoon, along with a number of other locations up there, even out to the coastline. And then here's that area of smoke, shows up better on this satellite imagery here with over the lower Kuskokwim, or over the lower Yukon, mid and lower Yukon River valleys, right up into the eastern interior. And then mostly sunny, smoke, of course, around Kenai Peninsula, sometimes drifting northward into the Anchorage area, sometimes the other way. And some clouds here over the Wrangell Mountains, but no precipitation at all. No thunderstorms reported yet. And the Panhandle, sunshine mostly, with temperatures in the upper 60s, lower 80s this afternoon. And for tonight, risk of a thunderstorm again, Stewart and Hyder, actually upper disturbance, weak one dropping down. So you'll see kind of an increase in the clouds here across the southeast coast. But I think any shower activity will be pretty isolated if it does occur, and it'd be over toward the eastern border. Otherwise, low clouds and fog, no change for the Bering Sea or the North Gulf Coast from what you saw this morning and late last night. Areas of smoke again, where it's been today, it'll probably be tonight and tomorrow. And up over the interior, mostly clear skies. Always a risk of some fog developing anywhere along the Arctic coast, actually, in the Chukchi, but really not looking for a lot of change up there. Seeing VFR into the northern Bering, down along the southwest coast. Get into the clouds, fog, drizzle, light rain type of pattern here along the western Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands. Then it gets a little more steadier, a fair amount of rain. AKwx reported moderate rain for a few hours today with this system, and looks like wet conditions will continue out there, but staying southwest of the Pribilofs. And then the outlook for tomorrow, still the areas of smoke kind of dissipating, hopefully, here in the interior, but it won't go away. Same thing with the Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise, sunny and possibly even hotter, looking for high temperatures into the mid-90s over the Susitna Valley, and again, lower 90s here, anywhere from the Kuskokwim Valley into the Copper River Basin, possibly even out in the deltas as well, with that upper level ridge kind of pulling back to the west a little bit, getting into a northerly flow aloft, which is pretty warm air aloft with the 14,000+ foot freezing levels, and then get any subsidence with that off the Alaska Range, and that just heats it right up even more. That's why we're looking well into the mid-90s to Susitna Valley, maybe even the Copper River Basin. Low clouds and fog again, no change for the Gulf of Alaska or along the southeast coast. Maybe a little more sun in the northern areas, and you'll see down south there. And taking a look at Tuesday, maybe more clouds here and cooler temperatures of the Panhandle. Isolated thunderstorms possible again along or east of the border. And thermal low now setting up, so it'll be even a little hotter now in interior Alaska. And look for some cooling with this low center developing. It'll tend to draw more ocean air up Cook Inlet and into Prince William Sound, hopefully. And now a chance of some isolated thunderstorms along the western Alaska Range in the afternoon there. Otherwise, nowhere else except maybe the northern Panhandle. And it looks like mostly sunny skies right on out to the Arctic coast again with very warm temperatures, and it looks like some low stuff will move into Bristol Bay as well as St. Lawrence Island and creep northward. A couple of very weak leftover troughs here with some light precipitation over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Lows for tonight, very warm, 65, 60s to near 70 for your lows here in the southwest interior, near 60 degrees all the way into the central Tanana Valley up toward Fort Yukon. 62, that's Kotzebue, your forecast low. It's unbelievable, 62 degrees, and then lower 60s right down to Bristol Bay. 50s, lower 60s, southeast coast. Highs tomorrow, mid-90s, Susitna Valley, into the 90s again, lower to mid, possibly in the warm areas there for the Copper River Basin. And near 90 for the Kuskokwim Delta, all the way up to McGrath. And for your lows, again, very mild here over the west, central, and southwest interior, 60s to near 70, followed by highs near 90. A little cooler Cook Inlet area, Anchorage mid-70s, still about 85, Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, 60s, lower 70s over the southeast coast, and 70s, Brooks Range to the north slope.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, again, VFR in the interior, areas of smoke, reduced visibilities a little bit, but hopefully not that bad. IFR along the eastern, well, actually along the entire Arctic coast, or just off the Arctic coast here all the way down into the Chukchi. And then VFR continues, Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, but IFR now north of St. Matthew Island, in toward the southwest coast, definitely in across Bristol Bay there with marginal for the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak starting out IFR, next ends eastward here, right into the southern southeast coast. Afternoon, that hangs in over the southern Panhandle with IFR conditions there, marginal VFR all the way up to about Juneau, over to Elfin Cove, maybe Yakutat, right along the North Gulf Coast, and some marginal VFR lingering in Prince William Sound. And the IFR here east of Kodiak now with VFR breaking out over Fognak Island, northward here, right up to the Arctic coast. And VFR continues through Tuesday morning, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound in the interior as well. Marginal VFR possible in Cook Inlet now, and the southern Kenai Peninsula, so Kachemak, Kamishak Bay areas, IFR back in over Kodiak, eastward, and a little more extensive over the southeast coast now, otherwise really no change anywhere else. And for Tuesday afternoon, risk of thunderstorms develop, some isolated to widely scattered thunderstorms, western Alaska range, otherwise no change here over the interior. IFR, Gulf of Alaska, mostly off the coast, marginal VFR along the coast, marginal for the Panhandle, and IFR, Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Moving on to passes for Anatuvik, VFR, and Adigan, VFR for another day, and Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR continues, and same thing for Rainy, VFR, and Windy, wide open, and Isabel as well, VFR, Mentasta and Tanita, both looking will be VFR, and let's see, Tanita also will be VFR, and guaranteed VFR for Portage, except early tomorrow morning, depending on how far that low cloud deck gets up into Prince William Sound, the eastern side here, past this canal, a little vulnerable to maybe marginal stuff, otherwise not much change. And Chilkoot and White, one more day of VFR flying. And looking at freezing levels here, 14,000 feet, quite an area of really high freezing levels here with that upper ridge that's lying just about right on top of this. We've got 12,000 feet up off the chart into the Arctic there, and 10,000 feet as well. 10 to 12,000 across the Panhandle, and out in the west, a little bit cooler, not much. 10,000 feet there just east or west of Nikolsky, and then a little pocket 8,000 foot freezing levels there just south of the central Aleutian associated with that system. And as far as icing goes, areas of here is about as bad as it'll get, just a slight chance of some icing, or this would be the best chance, the only area you'd see some, and it's not that great at that. Eastern Aleutians into the Adak-Atka area, Shemya staying southwest of the Pribilofs, and moving on to the jet stream. Here the 18,000 foot wind flow with the 33,000 foot wind speed jet maxes on there. Got 90 to 110 knots here, westerlies coming across the Pacific, split right through here south of the Alaska Peninsula, one branch off to the east, the other one 70 to 80 knots southeasterlies here coming around this tremendous area of high pressure aloft that continues to hold mostly, and will probably for another couple of days start to reorient itself, but very slowly. And this northerly jet now east of the area, 9,000 feet, we've got southeast winds 25 to 35 knots here. Windiest will be right over the Alaska, or over the Fox Islands there, 20 to 25 for the Alaska Peninsula, and then the southern Bering Sea easterlies 25 to 35, lighter over the western Aleutians, really light and variable winds up here with that center over the Chukchi Sea, 5 to 10 knots, northwesterlies at about 5 to 10 or 15 maybe 20, far eastern Arctic coast, again 9,000 feet, otherwise 5 to 10 knot winds right down into the Gulf of Alaska, southern Alaska, and just 5 to 10 also for the southeast coast. And then for 3,000, light variable winds for the Panhandle, easterlies 5 to 10, southern Alaska, variable at 5 for the central areas right up to the Arctic coast, and southeast 15 to 30 knots here from the Alaska Peninsula over toward Atka. And turbulence, look for occasional light to isolated moderate chops, especially for small aircraft for the Fox Islands, Adak and Atka.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. And when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space, around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot changed from what we saw yesterday or the day before. The outlook is for no big changes to occur here over the next 5 days. And moving on to coastal water forecast, pretty light here from a south-southeast direction on the south coast, 10 knots, 5-foot seas, and from a west becoming south, sort of variable there on the north coast, seas also 5 feet. Lynn Canal, light southerly winds, same things for Stevens Passage, southeast at 10 for Clarence Strait. And moving on to Tuesday, southeast 10 knots, central north coast with seas 4 to 5 feet, south at 10 on the southern coast there, and light southeast winds for the southern and central inside waters, and south 15 for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay. And for Prince William Sound, light southwest breeze tomorrow at 10 knots. Same thing for Cook Inlet, southwest at 10, seas 2 feet. And we've got west winds for the eastern North Gulf Coast there at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. And that becomes southwest at 15 here for the western North Gulf Coast. Barren Islands, west 15, Kamishak Bay. And for Tuesday, southeast 15 for Kamishak Bay now, 3-foot seas. Same thing for Barren Islands, southeast 15, southwest 15. Pick it up just a little bit there for Cook Inlet at 15 knots. Of course, that means any smoke comes up to the north-northeast as well. And southeast, I call it variable at 10 for both Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, 10 knots any direction with seas 2 feet in the sound to 5 feet out in the ocean. And for Kodiak Island, southwesterlies 20 knots tomorrow, seas 5 to 6 feet. And then southeast 15 here for the Alaska Peninsula with seas at 2 feet on the Bering Sea side, up to 7 feet Pacific side, southwest at 15 for Bristol Bay, and also from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Outlook for Tuesday, no change here from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southwest 15, southwest 10, Pacific side of the peninsula, Bering Sea side, northeast at 10, west 10 with 1-foot seas for King Salmon, west at 10 for Chillicothe Straits, seas at 2 feet, and southwest 15 along the east side of Kodiak Island. Fox Islands tomorrow, east-southeast 20 to 25 knots there, north of north of Unalaska Island, seas 5 to 9 feet. And for the central Aleutians, we got east-southeast 15 to 20 knot winds with 7 to 8-foot seas, and then northeast 15 here from Adak to Kiska, and then Kiska west, north of 20. And then for Tuesday, from Shemya over toward Kiska, west winds 20 knots and southwest 20. Adak and Atka average it out to south at 15 with seas at 4 to 7 feet, and mostly south winds 10 to 15 knots for the Fox Islands. Up along the southwest coast, southward Nunivak Island, very light southwest breeze there at about 10 knots, winds picking up to 20 knots out of the east for the Pribilofs with 4-foot seas. Northeast 15 everywhere else with seas all 3 feet. And for Tuesday, for St. Lawrence Island, northeast 15, we've got westerlies along the southwest coast here, 10 to 15 knots, seas hold at 2 feet, east 15 for the Pribilofs, east at 10, St. Matthew Island. And up along the Beaufort Sea here, the central and east side, just very light west-northwest at 5 1-foot seas or less, northwest at 10 on the far eastern zone there with 2-foot seas. And then northeast at 10 on the west side, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northeast 15, 3-foot seas, and then back down to 10-knot winds from Cape Thompson to Wales. And the outlook for Tuesday, 15-knot winds, Wales to Cape Thompson, and then the strongest winds again, about 20 knots, will be from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort there with 4-foot seas, falling back to 15 on the west side, and kind of a northerly drift here, varying depending on where you are, but really light for the central and eastern Arctic coast, only 5 knots and seas 1 foot. For tonight, clear, mostly clear skies, except for the smoke here, dense smoke advisory out until 6 a.m. tomorrow for central Tanana Valley, and then also smoke advisory for the western Kenai Peninsula. Fog and low clouds, a repeat tomorrow morning of what we had this morning there for the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast. Rain gets a little more widespread over the Aleutians and drifts into the Fox Islands. Otherwise, tomorrow, sunny and hot. Upper 80s to lower 90s or mid 90s here across southern Alaska. 85 to 90 or so in the central interior with 70s all the way out to the north slope. And thermal low in the interior develops. That might pull a little ocean air into south central Alaska on Tuesday. And otherwise, no change for the Gulf of Alaska and still hot in the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.